everybody. I hope you all had a fantastic Thanksgiving and now you're ready to head full steam ahead into Christmas. I know I can't wait. So over the course of 2019, we have been talking about finding our God-given passion, place, and purpose and fulfilling God's destiny for our lives. And yet so often I still hear from women, well, that's a great theory, but I just don't see how it can apply to my life. And then they give a reason for why they're the exception to the rule, something that's wrong with them, that they can't find their God-given passion, place, and purpose. And yet I can see, looking over the Christmas story, that that's as far as we have to look to see examples of people that no one else would have picked to fulfill God's purpose, to be world changers, to just change the course of history. And yet God chose them. And as they gave their lives and their hearts to Him to do whatever He asked them to do, He was able to make a fantastic difference in their lives. Take, for instance, Mary. I mean, here was a woman who easily could have said, oh, I am just too young for God to use me. I'm too inexperienced. I don't have any special training. I'm not cultured. I'm not, trained in any special way. She was just a young girl from a rural part of her country. And yet, that's not what God saw when He saw her. Instead, He looked at her, and instead of picking someone who had training or schooling or who was cultured in all the ways to do things just right, He chose her. And He said, I want you to not only give birth to my son, but to be the woman who will raise him and bring him into adulthood. You see, it doesn't matter if you're too young or too inexperienced or your resume is like Mary's and basically looks blank. If you have a heart that is open to God and say, you know what, you can do whatever you want with me, He will find ways to use you in His kingdom. Of course, the other end of the perspective can be seen in the life of Elizabeth, a woman who easily could have thought that her time had passed. It was over for her. I mean, in those days, it was important that a woman, she give an heir to her husband, especially being part of the Levitical line. She was supposed to give birth to a son who could pass on the torch and become a priest. And yet as years passed and she is eventually far past menopause, it seemed like she had not fulfilled her purpose, like God could have no plan for her life. And even in that culture, they carried with them a sort of shame and a disgrace about not having a child. And yet the truth was that it was part of God's plan to wait until they were more advanced in years for them to have a child who would become John the Baptist, who would usher in the Messiah. The thing is, it's never too early or too late to fulfill your God-given purpose, because God isn't looking for somebody to fit into a perfect little box. He's looking for a heart that will say, God, here's where I am in life. What can you do with me to fulfill your kingdom purpose? And that's how you can have a heart that God can use and find your own God-given passion, place, and purpose.